What's happening? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. I got asked to cover this, and figured I would give it a shot. Talking about cone of fire. I'm not talking machine guns or beaten zones or suppressive fire. More talking about cone of fire in regards to precision rifle and scope carbine. And what I mean by that is size of groups and the inputs of standard deviation and extreme spread and your ability to read wind. I think people, not angry me, just me. People I don't think realize shot groups, and they don't understand, including some instructors, don't understand standard deviation and velocity differences within lots of ammo. And so, talk through a couple concepts so people can track along with me. So, first concept is muzzle velocity. Muzzle velocity, right? The speed at which your bullet's leaving. Okay. Then you have to understand accuracy of a gun. Accuracy of a gun usually is translated in how it's phrased is in an MOA. MOA being, not to get too into it, but 1 inch at 100 yards. It's 1.047. 1 inch at 100 yards is 1 MOA, a shooter MOA, and it gets bigger as it gets out. So at 500 yards, it'll be 5 inches, and at 1,000 yards, it'll be 10 inches. So if you have a 1 MOA gun, that means the best your gun will shoot if shooting in a vacuum with a standard deviation or a difference in muzzle velocity with that platform is going to be 1 MOA. So that'd be 5-inch group. That means a 5-inch group. That means with no other differences, that's just because of the accuracy of the gun. So what people don't realize is that ammo, when you buy it, lot to lot, brand to brand, you get Black Hills 77, you get IMI 77, you get, whatever AAC 77. There's going to be a difference in velocity. And then depending how that gun ammo is loaded, there's going to be differences in velocity within that lot. And so how that is phrased to people who don't reload is usually referenced in standard deviation. Standard deviation means that two-thirds of the rounds shot will be within whatever that's saying. So if you have a SD of 50, that means that 2/3 of the ammo within that sample size fit within 50 feet per second of whatever the average is. And so your average might be 2750, and that means that if you have a SD of 50, then that means that 2/3 of them are in between 2700 and 2800 if you're 2750, right? So that'd be an SD of 50. So the reason why do we need to, okay, it looks like I paused for a sec. Using the phrase cone of fire. And what I mean by that is, like we said, if you have a 1 MOA gun, or if you have a half MOA gun, we'll use half MOA gun. We're shooting 700 yards. That means the best that gun will shoot will be 3.5 inches with no other inputs. We'll use 600 yards. So if you're using a half MOA gun, we'll call it 3 inches, 600 yards. I wrote down some numbers. So that means for the sake of argument, I'm going to draw pretty close to a 3-inch circle on here, right? 3-inch circle. So that is no inputs of velocity, no inputs of wind. Now, what does that mean? That is with an SD of 0. If you hand load, guys will get single-digit SDs. That means their ammo is so consistent that they're within 6 feet per second, 8 feet per second of the average. But if you go by AAC, you go by Black Hills, whatever it may be, your SD might be 25. Your SD might be 50. I mean, some ammo, when people start really freaking out, you might have an SD of 100. That means you have a 100-foot standard deviation. That means that 2/3 of the rounds that you're shooting are within 100 feet per second either direction of what the box says or what your average velocity will be. So what does that mean? So on a half MOA, a 3-inch target at 600, if we have a difference of 50 feet per second, that means that at 600 yards, where did I write that? 600 yards, that means it's 4.2 inches in either direction. So that 3-inch group now gained, and it's going to start to look something like this. Because the 3 inches caused by the differences in velocity are going to have vertical stringing caused by the velocity differences. And so your 3-inch group now, this isn't taking into account your shooting ability, how stable you are, your breathing, your grasp of the fundamentals, how your trigger squeeze is, anything else. This is just based off of, you have a half MOA gun, so you best it'll shoot is a 3-inch group at 600 yards. But now you've got 4 inches of vertical in both directions caused by the velocity differences within your lot. And so your cone of fire now has been elongated. Yeah, those are called Wes diagrams. I'm going to talk about them in a sec. So if you have a 1 MOA gun and at 600 yards, you'd have a 3-inch group. You'd have a 6-inch group, right? 1 MOA gun, 1 MOA at 600 would be 6 inches. So you'd have a 6-inch wide circle. And then from the edges of that 6-inch circle would be 4 point whatever inches, just off of a 50 feet per second variance in your SD. Now, this is without wind. So now we get into like wind calling, right? And so your ability to read wind. And this is if your wind call was stable between you and the target completely. And so this is when we talk in classes about guys truing their wind call. And it's like understanding, does that mean faster or slower? Specifically, slower will allow the projectile to be acted upon more by elements in gravity. Faster or slower just means where it goes. If it doesn't fall as much, that means it's faster. So if the average velocity was 2650, but you're actually moving 2700, what's happened? Your bullets are going to actually go high because they're not going to need as much drop. And if your bullets were going slower, then it's going to go low because that means it didn't travel as far as fast. So, but the SD doesn't matter. The SD is not one direction or the other. It's both directions. And so you're within the average high or low. That's why the group will elongate vertically both directions, because you're going to have some rounds that are going to go hot and you're going to have some rounds that are going to go slow. So now this is just velocity differences in the ammo. Now you talk about being within 1 mile an hour of your wind call. So at 600 yards, if you are off by 1 mile an hour in either direction, let's say it was a 5 mile an hour and I called a 4 mile an hour. A 1 mile an hour difference at 600 yards is going to be 4.3 inches. So now we almost added 4.2. So we basically take this circle and add 4 inches in both directions this way. So we have 4.2 this way, 4.2 this way, 4 inches this way or this way, depending on being within 1 mile an hour of my wind call. So if I had a 3-inch group and I add 8 inches, that means I have an 11-inch wide basketball based off of the SD of my ammo and my ability to read wind. So this is the best it'll shoot given the ammo you have, the gun you have, and the your ability to read wind. And 1 mile an hour is a really, really good fucking wind caller. So that means if you were shooting at a 2 MOA target, that means you're shooting at a 12-inch target at 600 yards, and you have an ammo with an SD of 50, and you can call wind within 1 mile an hour. That means your shot group is barely fitting on the target if you made a perfect wind call. So this is your cone of fire. And the same math can be done with, 1 MOA, can be done with plus or minus 3 miles an hour. So like at 600 yards, if you were off by 3 miles an hour, that means you think it's a 5 and it's actually an 8, like an 8 mile an hour wind. That means you're going to be off by 9.1 inches in whatever direction that you misread the wind. So if you misread it, you said it was 8 and it was actually 5, that means you're going to go off with the wind. If you thought it was, or you're going to call too much wind, and you're going to be on the windward side. And if you thought it was 5 and it's actually 8, then you're probably going to miss with the wind. So you're going to be on the leeward side. So hopefully that makes sense. But I was talking about in a previous live about cone of fire and understanding. We shoot at classes and guys are really upset because they're at 500 or 600 yards with a AR-15, and we shoot at 100 yards and we see what they're capable of, and that's the gun's capable of. But at 100 yards, you're not going to see the SD differences. And so they shoot this 1-inch group, and they don't realize that then they shoot on target, and they're bouncing high and low because they put one round on the bottom of the plate and one round on the top of the plate, but they're shooting AAC. It's got an SD of 100. And so you've got a 12-inch vertical that's going on if you held the same spot every time. Well, now they're trying to center up the rounds, and so they went a little low because that round happened to be a little slow, and then they hold high, and then they go over the top. And do you see how that can, like, it ends up pendulum swinging them all over the plate instead of just going like, hey, man, I know because I've chronoed my gun that this lot of ammo has an SD of about 70, which means that I'm going to have some vertical at distance that I'm not going to see at 100 yards. Because 100 yards, you're just not going to see the difference in velocity. So just understanding what the SD of your ammo does, and then your ability to read wind in the lateral. So hopefully that made sense. I will post this to my page. I'm probably going to download it and throw it on YouTube too. But hopefully that explanation helps some of you guys out in understanding kind of why you guys all just bought those Garmin chronos and what they give you. It's not necessarily as much for your velocity as it is understanding the consistency of your ammo in velocity and being able to understand, is this ammo going to be something that I need to be able to accept 50 to 70 foot per second and what that means on target. And so if it means on target annex, I actually have some of your shit right here, sitting right here. I have to put on some guns. But hopefully that helps. I'm Joe with Bruiser Industries. If you guys like this stuff, I do a bunch of stuff like this on Patreon and stuff. By all means, jump over there. It's $5. Skip a burrito. Throw me some love, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks, guys.